Get ready with me while we watch 60 Minutes by an Australian journalist with Gypsy Rose. This is one of the most mortifying interviews that I've ever seen. And the way she has lied, I think she's lied in others, but this one I think is the worst by far.
Girl in the world.
And then it graduated to a seizure disorder, muscular dystrophy, to leukemia.
But it was all a lie.
She controlled everything in my life.
Made up by her cruel mother.
She was particularly manipulative.
So Gypsy Rose took drastic action. Whose plan was it to kill your mother?
It was my plan.
That's next on 60 Minutes. You're unlikely to meet anyone sweeter than Gypsy Rose Blanchard. She really is charming, but she's also a convicted murderer. With help from a boyfriend she met online, she killed her very own mother. The brutal crime, Dee Blanchard was stabbed to death, happened 10 years ago, and Gypsy Rose was jailed. But she's now free and very determined to let the world know why she did what she did.
So we have the crib, we have a dresser.
Gypsy Rose Blanchard has one promise for her soon-to-be-born first child. Whatever it takes, she'll be the best mother she can be. So what are we looking for?
Clothes.
Yeah.
I love shopping for clothes.
And certainly nothing like her own mother, who, while pretending to be loving and caring...
And what about your mum? Did she like dressing you up? And
She did.
was anything but. So evil, in fact, Gypsy has just spent 8.5 years in jail for murdering her.
Breaking news this morning, 48-year-old Dee Blanchard is found dead inside her home. Her 19-year-old daughter Gypsy is still considered missing.
This is an ongoing investigation. And I want to start off with saying things are not always as they appear.
I wasn't born evil. I wasn't born a murderer. My circumstances took me there, and that was my path.
It's a tale with all the twists and turns of a Hollywood thriller. A sweet little girl plagued by relentless and serious illness. Gypsy was raised by a seemingly doting single mum, who was in fact a monster.
She was particularly manipulative and convincing.
Isolated and abused, for decades Gypsy slipped through the cracks of America's healthcare system. Until, she says, she had no choice but to end her mother's life. Are you a victim or a murderer?
I'm both victim and perpetrator.
do these photos bring back happy memories, or are they?
They do. They were the simple times in life. I say when things were good.
Yeah.
So.
Born in Louisiana in 1991 and raised by her mother, Claudine, or Dee Blanchard, Gypsy was a sickly child. Also, Dee told everyone, including the little girl's father, Rod, who she rarely saw.
Right from birth, 3 months old, Dee was telling me that she had sleep apnea, which, until this day, I don't know if that was real or not. It escalated from then. Problems with her eyes, hearing, her digestive system. After that, Gypsy couldn't walk anymore. She had a muscular disorder.
Dee confined Gypsy to a wheelchair, even when it was just the two of them at home, and fed her daughter medications which gave her horrible side effects, mimicking the symptoms of various illnesses.
There was a long list of medical illnesses that my mom told the doctors that I had, ranging from muscular dystrophy to leukemia, hearing impaired, vision impaired, anything that could be wrong with someone, honestly.
And you believed her?
I did believe her because I grew up that way. So she started telling the doctors that I had sleep apnea when I was just a baby. And then it graduated to a seizure disorder, and she kept building on that list of things. So by the end of it all, there was not a single part of my body that didn't have something supposedly wrong with it.
By the age of 8, Gypsy was a regular patient in local hospitals and had a feeding tube inserted in her stomach.
I think the feeding tube is one of the things that gives me the most alarm, because once a child has a tube that either goes through their nose and into their stomach, or directly surgically a tube that goes into their stomach, that parent can put in any kind of poisoning or medicine or toxin, and they can also starve the child.
Total control.
Total control.
Professor Beatrice Yorker is one of America's leading experts in child abuse. She says Dee Blanchard had a severe case of Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
Munchausen syndrome is a condition where somebody makes themselves ill for the purposes of getting medical attention. When it's Munchausen syndrome by proxy, or Munchausen by proxy abuse, instead of making yourself sick, you make your child sick, or a dependent in your care sick for the purposes of getting medical attention.
Why would any mother do this?
They do it because they are getting their needs for attention. Their needs to be in a nurturing hospital environment. Their need to be seen as a caring, wonderful mother, doing everything for their child that has special needs or is dying or has some horrible condition. And they bask in it, and they have a compulsive need to get that kind of attention.
And in this case, financial reward as well.
Exactly.
The sweet little sick girl captured the hearts and pity of Americans. Gypsy and Dee Dee were given cash from charities, trips to Disney World, even a new home.
It's beautiful, and it's happy, and it's full of love.
But experiences that seemed charming in childhood lost their shine by her early 20s, when Gypsy discovered the internet and the world she was missing out on. It was here at New Orleans Children's Hospital where Gypsy spent so much of her childhood, undergoing dozens of medical procedures which she now knows were unnecessary. Her mother Dee Dee would bring Gypsy here with an endless list of problems and symptoms, the seemingly doting parent insisting her child needed treatment. And if suspicions were raised or questions asked, Dee Dee would quickly move hospitals, even cities. Over the years, Gypsy was treated by at least 150 doctors and medical specialists. At what stage or age did you realise that it was a farce?
I knew that I could walk. I knew that I could eat, so I didn't need the feeding tube. But the other things like cancer, you can't see that. So I had believed that I had cancer up until the time that I was arrested and could talk to my lawyer.
How does a mother or any parent convince medical professionals that their child is, in this case, terminally ill, when in fact they're perfectly healthy?
Oh, it's so easy. Doctors are trained to rely on the history provided by the patient or provided by the patient's parent. So when a mother says, my child has been vomiting and vomiting and they can't keep food down, and the child looks dehydrated and maybe emaciated or underweight, the doctor believes the mother that the child has been vomiting and vomiting. And maybe it turned out that the mother is actually not feeding the child.
So is it a serious mental illness?
No. The people who do this are perfectly conscious and aware and plan and premeditate what they do.
And their victims are typically young, vulnerable, and therefore obedient. The question so many people want to know, why didn't you get up and walk? Tell someone, run away, tell a doctor.
I don't think people understand the emotional hold that an abuser has on their victims. So, asking me that is the same as putting me in a category of saying, well, domestic violence survivors, why didn't they just leave their abusive husbands?
Trapped and desperate, what Gypsy did next stunned the community and police, propelling her to fame as one of America's most notorious criminals. Coming up, whose plan was it to kill your mother?
It was my plan.
Gypsy's violent path to freedom, and the man who helped her commit murder. Did you instruct him to stab her 17 times?
No, I did not.
To nearly decapitate her? Ken Urker could easily have his own cooking show.
Makes some simple but pretty good, healthy dishes for an expecting mother.
But the 31-year-old seems content playing a supporting role to fiancé and convicted killer Gypsy Rose Blanchard. The pair met while Gypsy was behind bars. Ken was a pen pal, and now they're preparing to welcome their first child.
I mean, I want to be there for her and for my daughter as much as possible, so really...
It's a happy, relaxed home, a striking contrast to Gypsy's upbringing and path to parenthood.
So where are you going today? I'm going to Children's Mercy Hospital to see my...
Gypsy spent her childhood in and out of hospitals, confined to a wheelchair she didn't need. Her mother Dee Dee had a sinister secret, a disorder known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Not only pretending Gypsy was terribly ill, but making her daughter sick, drugging her, and convincing doctors to insert a feeding tube, among other procedures. By the time Gypsy was 23, she had had enough. So at what point did you make that decision that killing your mother was the only way that you could be free?
I had tried to exhaust all the options that I thought was available to me.
It's a sign of the desperation. I think you were such a, seemingly sweet young woman with having lived a very sheltered life.
Exactly.
That's where your mind went.
Exactly. Because it's not like I had a criminal record. It's not that I had a history of violence or anything like that.
Been running with the wrong crowd?
No running with the wrong crowd. It was
In fact, you had no friends.
I didn't have any friends. I wasn't allowed to. So she controlled everything in my life.
In 2012, on a Christian dating website, Gypsy met the man who she hoped would set her free.
GODEJOHN also has a criminal past. In 2013, he was arrested after investigators say he was watching pornography and fondling himself in a McDonald's restaurant for 9 hours.
Nicholas GODEJOHN was 26, autistic and willing to kill in order to be with Gypsy.
I guess she's your girlfriend. Did you
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
Do you love her?
Oh, do I?
Over the next 3 years, the couple hatched an horrific but unsophisticated plan to end Gypsy's torment. On the night of June 9, 2015, Nicholas GODEJOHN travelled from his home state of Wisconsin to Gypsy and Didi's home in Missouri.
I was with my mom in our Habitat for Humanity home. We watched a movie, and then we went to sleep, and then it happened.
You remember your last words with her?
I did. I did go to the kitchen, and I gave her a hug, and I told her I love you. And I remember holding a pillow that she slept with like every night and crying into it and apologizing to this pillow as if it were her and just saying, I'm so sorry and I love you, and just taking in the scent of the pillow. Because in a sense, it's like saying goodbye.
Gypsy waited till her mother fell asleep, then let Nicholas in to do the deadly deed.
And when she was killed, where were you?
I was in the bathroom.
Could you hear her?
I could. And in that moment, like, I wanted to help her. Like, the thoughts in my head was, I want to help, but I was almost paralyzed in my own skin to move.
Did you instruct him to stab her 17 times?
No, I did not.
To nearly decapitate her?
No, I did not.
Gypsy is strikingly calm, almost detached, as she recalls the horrific events that would land her boyfriend in jail for life.
I have to say, I've spent a couple of days with you now. You don't strike me as someone who's capable of planning a murder.
Well, I mean, my situation was very centered around my circumstances. So I can honestly say I would have never committed that crime had I not been pushed to the brink where I really just snapped. Guilty.
The court finds that there is a factual basis for a plea of guilty.
In fact, life with her mother was so unbearable that for Gypsy, prison felt like a holiday.
That was the most freedom I had ever had. I was like, I can have a job now. And, you know, I was one of those people that's like, yay, I'm excited to have a job.
And eat normal food?
Eat normal food. Like, this is...
So this was the independence that you had not experienced?
Exactly. It's a newfound independence.
She was released 8.5 years into her 10-year sentence and remains on parole. But life after lockup has been far from normal.
How has re-entry been?
Re-entry's been a whirlwind for me.
Gypsy's awful crime evoked a combination of outrage and sympathy, making her an instant celebrity. A reality TV star and social media influencer.
I'm vlogging the whole thing. Oh, look at that! Look at this little sign!
You might think someone who'd had such an extraordinarily complex and ultimately fatal mother-daughter relationship would be daunted, but Gypsy and Ken refused to let the past dictate their future.
We definitely did go off the rails. We got tattoos and we got pregnant with them.
They're starting over, determined to create a safe and happy home for their baby girl.
What would you like childhood to be like for your daughter?
I mean, honestly, I would just want my children and my child to have a childhood that, like, I never had.
Yeah.
So, I mean, growing up, like, I missed out on all those, like, milestone moments, like going to kindergarten and, you know, a prom and all these different things that kids experience. I didn't get to.
A few weeks after we met Gypsy, just after Christmas last year, the couple welcomed baby Aurora.
I don't have any fears of becoming a mother. I never did. I just will say that my will to be a better mother than what my mother was is so strong that I'm not going to continue the cycle.
I think that Gypsy recognizes that she does not want to be the way her mother was.
Professor Beatrice Yorker is a world-renowned expert in Munchausen syndrome by proxy. She's adamant this tragic tale can have a happy ending.
I think she'll work really hard to be a nurturing and caring and authentic mother. And, you know, it is just a relief to see how possible that can be for survivors of such extreme abuse.
So what'd you get?
A cute little outfit. There was a lot of cute things in that store.
After more than 20 years with no voice, Gypsy is telling her story in her own words. But she knows the toughest conversation is still ahead of her.
How do you plan to tell your daughter your story and what happened to her grandmother?
I knew from day one that this conversation would have to happen with my kids someday. And that's why my book is so important, because this book is my legacy. And I will always be honest with her. Ken and I both will sit her down, have a conversation surrounded by family, and we will let her know what happened.
Do you feel that you've done the time for your crime?
You know, I really, really struggle with that. they could give me 10 years in prison, but that's not going to stop the guilt and the regret and the remorse and the nightmares and the stigma that I have to live the rest of my life with. So in a sense, I have a life sentence. I'm just living it in a much bigger prison.
I got my hand on a FOIA of Gypsy Rose that, when I tell you, will knock your socks right off. Everything that she's been telling the world has been a lie. But it's worse than what we even thought. Nicholas GODEJOHN had a history of wanting to unalive himself, and in fact tried to unalive himself right before the unaliving of Dee Dee Blanchard. I am going to do another video with this breakdown of some of this unseen FOIA information from her court documents, but I'm just letting you know that once you all see this, if you think you were mad before, this is gut-wrenching, and it's really shows you how the system screwed over Nicholas GODEJOHN. I have always said that the system screwed him over, but to the lengths is out of control. This court documents are really criminal, and the people that did this to Nicholas are trying to stop this from getting out there because they themselves would probably be facing time. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a great day. Bye-bye for now.